A story of burning passion meeting the cold reality of a world that never sleeps. Experience the intense contrast of emotions through our vivid 3D cinematic lens and high-stakes storytelling. Subscribe today and witness the collision of fire and ice in every new chapter we tell.
It was 4,000 in the morning when I woke up. Not the kind of waking where you drift up slowly, the way sleep releases you gently. This was sudden. Absolute, like someone had grabbed my shoulder and pulled me upright. I was sitting in bed with my heart pounding before I even understood why. I'm 67 years old. I've slept in the same bedroom for 31 years. I know every creak of this house, every sound the pipes make in winter, every way the oak tree outside scratches against the window when the wind picks up. That morning, everything was still, quiet, in a way that felt deliberate. And then I remembered. She had been there. In the dream. My wife, my Beverly, standing in the kitchen of our old house on Crescent Mill Road, the one we sold when we moved to Pensacola. She was wearing the blue cardigan she used to wear on Sunday mornings. Her hair was the way it looked in her 50s, before the illness. She looked healthy. More than healthy. She looked like herself, the version of herself that laughed easily and sang off-key to the radio while she made coffee. I don't remember everything we said. Dreams are like that. But one thing came through with a clarity that didn't feel like a dream at all. She looked directly at me and she said, "Don't let him file that paperwork, sweetheart. Don't you sign a single thing." That was it. I woke up. I sat there in the dark for a long time. Beverly has been gone for 3 years. Pancreatic cancer. 11 weeks from diagnosis to the end. And I have never in my life experienced anything that moved as fast or hurt as much. We were married for 42 years. I don't say that to impress anyone. I say it so you understand what it means when I tell you that hearing her voice, even in a dream, even for a moment, undid me completely. I got up. I went to the kitchen. I made coffee I didn't drink. And I sat at the table in the dark, thinking about what she had said. Drop your city in the comments. Tell me what time it is where you are right now. Now let me tell you what the paperwork was. And why, by the time I figured out what my son had done, I understood that Beverly had always seen him more clearly than I had. I have one child, my son. He's 38, works in commercial real estate in Atlanta. His name is Conrad. Conrad was always sharp. That's the word I used for years, the word I was proud of, sharp. He could read a room the way other people read words on a page. He knew what people wanted to hear before they finished their sentences. His mother used to say he had a gift. I used to nod and agree with her. I thought it was charm. I didn't understand until much later that charm and calculation can look identical from the outside, especially when you love someone. Beverly saw it. She never said it directly. That was not her way. But she saw it. There were small things over the years, the time Conrad borrowed money from us for a down payment on his first condo, and we never spoke of it again. Not once, even when I knew he could have repaid it. The way his visits home always coincided with moments when I'd mentioned something about the house, the property, what things might be worth. Beverly would get quiet in those moments. A particular kind of quiet. After she died, Conrad called more. He came down to Pensacola twice in the first year. He helped me go through her things, which was kind, and I was grateful. He took me to dinner and listened to me talk about her for hours. He seemed patient, generous with his time. I thought grief had changed him. I thought losing his mother had opened something in him. I was wrong, but I didn't know that yet. In the spring, about 8 months before that morning, I woke up at 4:11. Conrad came to visit and brought a man with him. A colleague, he said. A financial advisor named Philip. Mid-40s, nice suit, the kind of handshake that's too firm on purpose. They took me to dinner at a waterfront restaurant on Palafox Street, the kind of place where the menu doesn't have prices. And over a very good piece of redfish, they explained an idea to me. The idea was this. Conrad wanted to help me simplify my estate. I was getting older. The house in Pensacola was worth considerably more than what we paid for it. Between that, Beverly's life insurance, and 2 retirement accounts, there was a meaningful amount of money involved. Conrad said he'd been talking to Philip about the most efficient way to structure things, so that when the time came, there wouldn't be any complications, no probate delays, No tax exposure. Just a clean transition. It sounded responsible. It sounded like my son taking care of me. Philip had materials. Printed documents in a folder with his company's logo on it. He walked me through them over dessert. Most of it was language I didn't follow. Trusts, transfer instruments, executor provisions. Conrad kept saying things like, "You don't need to worry about the details, Dad. That's what we're here for. And this is just to protect you." I told them I'd think about it. I took the folder home. It sat on my kitchen counter for 2 weeks. I read through it twice and understood maybe a third of it. I kept meaning to call my own attorney, a man named Arthur, who'd handled Beverly's estate and who I trusted, but I kept putting it off. Conrad called every few days, not pressuring exactly, just checking in, just making sure I had everything I needed. Was I comfortable with the documents? Did I have questions? Philip was available any time. I almost signed it. I want to be honest about that. I am not a stupid man, but I am a lonely one, and Conrad's attention felt like something I hadn't had in years. I wanted to believe it meant what it looked like. And then Beverly came to me in that dream and told me not to sign a single thing. I called Arthur the next morning. I didn't mention a dream. I'm a 67-year-old retired civil engineer from the Florida Panhandle, and I wasn't about to tell my attorney that my deceased wife visited me while I slept and gave me legal advice. I just told him I had some documents I needed him to look at before I did anything. He said, "Come in Thursday." I brought the folder. Arthur read through it at his desk while I sat across from him and watched his expression. Arthur is in his early 70s. He has the face of a man who has spent decades being unsurprised by human nature. But about 15 minutes in, something shifted. He set down one page, picked up another, held them side by side, and the line between his eyebrows deepened. He looked up at me over his glasses. "Walter," he said. "No, I'm sorry, I'm not Walter. Let me be clear. He said my name, and the way he said it told me everything before the words did." "Who put this together?" he asked. I told him Conrad had arranged it with a financial advisor. Arthur was quiet for a moment. Then he said carefully, "This document, if signed, would transfer primary trustee authority over your property assets and a significant portion of your liquid accounts to your son, not to a neutral third-party trustee, to him directly, with very limited conditions for reversal." I said I didn't understand. He said, "It means that if you sign this, Conrad would control your house, your accounts, and your ability to access them, and undoing it would be difficult and expensive." The room got very still. I'm not a man who cries easily. I didn't cry then. I just sat there and thought about Beverly in her blue cardigan. I thought about that particular quiet she got sometimes when Conrad was visiting. I thought about all the small things I had watched and filed away under the wrong category for 30 years. "What do I do?" I asked. Arthur told me not to sign anything. He said he wanted to make some calls. Conrad came down that weekend. He didn't know I'd been to see Arthur. He'd called earlier in the week, and I'd told him I was thinking things through, which was true in ways he didn't understand. He arrived on a Saturday afternoon. He brought a bottle of wine and a bag of the pralines from a place in Atlanta I'd mentioned liking once, years ago. He remembered. That's Conrad. He always remembered the small things, the details that made you feel seen. It was one of the things I'd always loved about him. We sat on the back porch. The Gulf air was warm for October. He talked about work, about a development project outside Savannah he was excited about. He asked how I was sleeping. He asked about my neighbor's dog that I'd mentioned once had started barking at night. He was attentive, present. I let him talk. Inside, I was thinking about what Arthur had told me 2 days earlier. He'd made his calls. He'd found out that Philip, the financial advisor with the expensive suit, was not registered with any firm Arthur could verify. His credentials were, at best, murky. At worst, fabricated entirely. And the documents Conrad had presented to me were, in Arthur's words, aggressively written in the interest of the named co-trustee, which was Conrad. I let the silence sit between us for a while. The sun was getting lower over the water. A pelican was doing what pelicans do, riding the updraft along the tree line. Finally I said, "Conrad, I went to see Arthur about those documents." He didn't flinch. That was the thing that stayed with me afterward. He didn't flinch. He just looked at me with an expression that was almost perfectly calm and said, "Oh yeah? What did he think?" I said, "He thought I shouldn't sign them." A pause. Then Conrad said Arthur was being overly cautious. He said estate attorneys always saw the worst-case scenario because that's how they justified their fees. He said this was just a straightforward protection plan, that there was nothing in those documents that wasn't in my best interest, and if Arthur had concerns, maybe Arthur wasn't the right fit anymore. He said that last part gently, reasonably, as if it were a natural thing to suggest that I replace the attorney who had known me for 15 years because that attorney had told me something inconvenient. I looked at my son. I really looked at him, the way you sometimes can't when you love someone too much. He was relaxed. His wine glass was in his hand, and his posture was easy, and everything about him said, this is a normal conversation between two people who trust each other. And I thought about the word sharp, about how long I had used it as a compliment. "I'm not going to sign the documents," I said, "and I'm not replacing Arthur." Something moved behind his eyes. It was fast, and he covered it quickly, but I'd been his father for 38 years. I saw it. "Dad." "I also spoke to your Aunt Sylvia," I said. That was when he went still. I should explain. Beverly's sister, Sylvia, lives in Birmingham. She is 71 years old and formidable in the way certain Southern women of a particular generation simply are. She and Beverly were close their whole lives. After Beverly died, Sylvia started calling me every Sunday, which I treasured. In one of those calls, a few weeks earlier, she had mentioned almost in passing that Conrad had called her as well, that he had asked her, casually, just curious, whether I had ever talked to her about the house, about the financial situation, about whether I'd considered moving somewhere smaller now that I was alone. Sylvia had thought it was odd. She'd filed it away. When I called her after seeing Arthur, she confirmed every detail and added a few more. Conrad had been making calls to more than one person. He was building a picture of my financial situation from the outside in, asking questions through people who were connected to me and who wouldn't think to mention it. It was methodical. And it had been going on, as best Sylvia could piece together, for more than a year. He sat on my porch and didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "I was trying to help you." I said, "I know you believe that. I don't know if it was true." I still don't. There's a version of Conrad where some part of him genuinely believed he was looking out for his father, that he was being practical and efficient, that the money would have stayed in the family anyway, and so what was the harm? I don't know how much of the calculation was conscious, and how much was the kind of self-serving logic that people dress up as love. What I do know is this. A man who genuinely wants to help you does not bring someone with false credentials to a dinner. He does not draft documents designed to make it difficult for you to reverse course. He does not quietly interview your sister-in-law about your finances without telling you. Whatever Conrad believed he was doing, what he actually did was build a structure designed to catch me, and the only reason it didn't work was because Beverly told me not to sign anything. He left that evening. We didn't shout. There was no dramatic confrontation, no table flipped, no door slammed. That's not who I am, and it was never who Beverly was either. He drove back to Atlanta, and I sat on the back porch until it got dark and the mosquitoes made being outside untenable. And then I went inside and stood in the kitchen for a while, doing nothing in particular. There's a photo of Beverly on the refrigerator. It's from a trip we took to Asheville maybe 12 years ago. She's laughing at something I said, her head thrown back, entirely unself-conscious. It's my favorite picture of her because it looks exactly like her, which sounds obvious but isn't. Photographs often capture something adjacent to a person, a performance of themselves. This one caught her off guard. I looked at that photograph for a long time. "You always knew," I said out loud, to no one and to her. In the months that followed, Arthur helped me set up a proper estate plan, a neutral institutional trustee, clear documentation, everything structured the way it should have been from the start. I also changed the locks, not out of hostility, but out of the clear-eyed practicality that Beverly always had more of than I did, and that I was finally learning. Conrad and I have spoken twice since that afternoon on the porch. Short calls. Careful and cordial in the way that conversations are, when something fundamental has shifted and neither person is pretending otherwise. I don't know what the future holds for us. I hope something. I am his father, and I don't stop being his father because of what happened. But love and trust are not the same thing, and I've stopped confusing them. What I want to say, to anyone watching this who knows what it's like to stand in a kitchen at 4 in the morning with your heart in your throat, because for just a moment your person was there and then wasn't, I believe she came back to warn me. I can't prove that. I can't explain the mechanics of it or defend it to a skeptic. I'm just a retired engineer from Pensacola, and I know what I know. Beverly protected me our whole marriage. I don't see why death would change her mind. If this story stayed with you, if you've experienced something you couldn't explain, or if someone in your life has made you feel the way Conrad made me feel and you're still finding your way through it, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Trust what you feel. Trust the people who loved you before they had any reason to, and never, under any circumstances, sign anything you don't fully understand, even if the person asking has known your name their whole life. Especially then. I've had a lot of time to sit with what happened. That's the thing about getting older that nobody warns you about. You have more quiet than you know what to do with. And in that quiet, things settle into clarity whether you want them to or not. What Conrad didn't come from nowhere. That's what I keep coming back to. It wasn't a sudden decision, some dark impulse that arrived one morning and took over. It was built slowly, carefully, over months, maybe longer. The calls to Sylvia, the dinner on Palafox Street, Philip with his firm handshake and his folder of language designed to confuse. None of that happens by accident. It happens because someone made a series of choices, each one small enough to seem reasonable in isolation, each one moving in the same direction. That's how it works, I think. Not in dramatic moments, but in accumulation. And that's also I've come to understand how the consequences work. Not in dramatic moments either. Just accumulation, moving in the other direction. Conrad is sharp, and he used that sharpness to build something that would have hurt his own father. What he didn't account for, what I don't think he ever considered, is that the same intelligence that makes a person effective at manipulation also makes them capable of knowing better. He knew what he was doing. That's not a small thing. It means he chose it. And choices have weight. They land somewhere, eventually. What I want to say about Beverly is this. She spent 42 years paying attention to our son, to our life, to the small details that accumulate into a picture of who a person actually is, not just who they present themselves as. She was not naive. She was, if anything, more clear-eyed than I was. And I was an engineer, a man who spent his career reading structures, figuring out where the load was distributed, identifying the points most likely to fail. She could read people the way I read blueprints. I just wasn't always willing to look at what she saw. That's the part I have to sit with, not what Conrad did. What I almost let happen because I confused loneliness for closeness, attention for love. Beverly warned me in ways I didn't listen to for 30 years. The quiet she got, the careful way she changed the subject, the things she didn't say that I should have learned to hear. I heard her in a dream when I might have finally been still enough to listen. There's something in that worth paying attention to. The people who truly love you tell you the truth, even when it costs them something. And the people who want something from you tell you what you want to hear, until they don't need to anymore. I am 67 years old. I have more of my life behind me than ahead, and I am not interested in pretending otherwise. But I'll tell you what I know now that I didn't know clearly enough before. Your greatest protection is not a locked door or a legal document, though those matter. It's your own willingness to look at what's real, even when what's real is painful. Especially then. Conrad and I are not where I hope we might one day be. But I'm still his father. I carry that. I just carry it now with my eyes open. And Beverly, I'll say it plainly. Beverly saved me. Whatever that means, whatever form it took, she was not finished looking out for me. I intend to be worthy of that.